Hello everyone, my name is DarkRiolu27. I'm a mainly Kirby speedrunner and also Mario Maker streamer. I'm going to be running Kirby's Dream Land 3 for you today. And without further ado, let's get going. One thing I like about this game is it has fast resets, and as soon as you get into the run there's already some speed tech. Waddle DX, who made the task for this game, which is really cool, I'll probably talk more about that later, realized that you can just reset as soon as the beginning cutscene opens, and then once you go back into the game, the cutscene registers as being played, which means the game allows you to skip it. So this is the best ending category, also known as 97%. So the main objective is to complete a specific mission in every level of the game. They start off reasonably easy. The first mission is just to not step on any flowers in this level. And this is also the 2P category, so I'm going to be controlling two characters at once at certain points with two different controllers. 2P actually wasn't a category before I started running this game, but this was like my first real speed game, and when I was looking at runs I noticed just how much time could possibly be saved by using two different characters. So when I started running I just used two characters. I didn't even know whether it was a rule or not, and then when I was submitting my runs they just made a different category because they probably didn't want to compare all the 1P runners against 2P runs, which is probably a good idea. My personal headcanon is they just wanted to keep my runs away from all the normal people, so they quarantined me in a different category. So Gooey has a lot of uses. Usually when he spawns there's a second before he can do anything, but there are two things he can do immediately, which is enter doors and also grab animal friends, which you will see right here and there. If I want him to grab an ability though, I have to spawn him pretty early so that I can wait and then have him take the ability after a second has passed. I'm also going to have Gooey hold on to a lot of the animal friends. The main reason for that is that if you have an animal friend, whenever you go through a door you get a longer animation. So whenever I can, I'm going to have the player without the animal friend be the one that actually goes through the door. It's not a big deal at any specific point, but it can really add up over the entire run. Unfortunately, I didn't have Gooey self-destruct in time. You're seeing a good example of how Gooey can affect the camera, which then affects enemy spawns, because the camera is the thing that determines when enemies spawn, and so if the camera tries to keep both Gooey and Kirby on screen, it will move differently than if it's just got Kirby on screen. And at this point there's no reason for me to try to get rid of Gooey, since I'm going to use him to just enter a door. That's actually a large use of Gooey, is just going through doors. And if you're familiar with Kirby 64, that's the sequel to this game, and they reused especially a lot of the music, as well as having some Easter eggs from this game in that one. Now I do want Gooey to go through this door, but even more importantly, I want to have him present for this minigame because Gooey is placed right next to the door, as you can see. For some reason you can't fly in the minigame rooms either, so it's incredibly slow for Koo to just flap slowly across the room, so it's really nice to have Gooey near the door, and I misinputted. That was very unfortunate. I thought I pressed twice, but I only pressed it once, so that's not too bad of a failure, but it does show that whenever you fail any objective in this game, you have to restart the entire level, which is really punishing. That's a large run killer. Not that mission specifically, but actually a lot of the mini games can be very difficult, and one wrong move, you have to start the entire level over. So let's hope that's my only minigame failure. It's just really annoying when you fail them because of something dumb like a missed input, even though you didn't actually get the wrong answer. So let's try that again. Pretty good RNG too, I barely even had to move my cursor. So that will not be the only minigame in this game. There's actually a pattern for the objectives in each level. The first level of each world has something flower related. The second level you need a specific animal friend and or ability combo. And by the way, I forgot to mention Ku is the owl, so you'll be seeing him a lot. I'll talk about him in just a second. And then the third level of each world is the minigame, a lot of which are dreaded by many players. Fourth level, you have to fight a mini-boss. Fifth level, you have to bring a specific animal friend to the end of the level. Those are pretty easy to figure out once you realize what you have to do, because the picture on the level kind of shows the correct species of animal, so you can pretty much figure out which friend you need. And then the sixth one is kind of miscellaneous. It might involve collecting items or sculpting a picture out of star blocks. So I think this game is a pretty good speed game, but the reason a lot of people don't like it and a lot of people have a hard time getting into it is that it involves a whole lot of mashing. When you're with Ku or Kine the fish, the faster you mash B, the faster you go. So a lot of people are turned off by that. They get really tired really quickly. In my experience, if you just practice for a couple weeks, your thumb just stops getting tired. So I don't mind at all mashing anymore. I can easily mash at basically full speed for an entire run and not get tired. But the movement with Ku is really cool. The mashing is a little unfortunate, but you have a lot of specific movement quirks that it takes a while to learn, so the movement in this game has a really high skill ceiling. And you'll be seeing Kine the fish a lot in the next world, since that's the water world. And then most of the run will just be Ku after that. If you're talking like a turbo controller, I don't think those are allowed. I don't know if many people really have access to a turbo controller for SNES, so it wouldn't be very fair. So here's another instance where I'm going to have GUI hold my animal friend. The big thing is that I can go through doors faster, but it also makes the platforming a little bit easier. Kine is actually not bad for platforming on land. He was super slow and awful in Dreamland 2, but he can go at normal running speed in this game, and he can jump really high. So he's actually good, but Kirby is a little better just in this specific stage. Kine would probably be better if I needed to bounce off a lot of enemies, because a lot of animal friends can jump off enemies just like Mario, but Kirby does not have that ability. At most, he can bounce slightly off them. I'm going to grab Rick here. You actually don't need him for this objective, but the main reason that I have stone right now is that there's actually a glitch you can do where you can clip through ceilings with brick and stone. This is another thing I found by watching WaddleDX's task. So if you use stone and then press Y to unstone and X to dismount Rick on the exact same frame, you shoot up with a bunch of momentum, and that's enough to allow you to go slightly into ceilings. And because these ceilings are so thin, you can just go straight through them. And then I can have Gooey grab Rick and warp him to me so I can do it again. And I see that one question. No, for some reason, Kine in Kirby 64 does absolutely nothing, which doesn't make any sense. Every other animal friend does something, but Kine can't even move for some reason. So this is level 6, one of the miscellaneous missions. Just had to collect 3 shapes so that Pierre here can juggle them, I guess. I didn't really mention it at the time, but I had Gooey grab clean in the last stage. That's going to be a recurring theme. If I don't have Gooey grab clean, I have to go back to the first or second stage in the world to get it for the boss, because Coo and Clean does a lot of damage. So we're going to be using clean for almost every boss. You could use it for literally every boss, but there are a couple that I have a better alternative for, specifically the World 3 boss. And then in Best Ending you get this really long cutscene after clearing every level where the land is like purified and you destroy the darkness in that specific world. Yeah, the ability and friend combinations are really cute and quirky in this game. One of the fun parts of playing this game, especially casually, is just trying out all the different animal friend power combinations and just seeing all the silly stuff that they do. And it's also helpful to do that because in a lot of levels you need one of a few, if not a single specific combination of animal friend and power. So if you already know what all of them do, it's a big help for solving the puzzles. And luckily, since we already have clean, I don't need to take a second to grab it in this level. All these broom enemies, the broom hatters, they all give clean, so it wouldn't exactly be a hassle to get it, but it does take a second just to see the animation of grabbing any power in this game. Luckily it doesn't freeze the entire game like most Kirby games, so if I can make it so that I grab an ability in an auto-scroller or something, I can actually not lose any time, since I would just have to be waiting anyway. In other games, if you get an ability even in an auto-scroller, it'll just pause the auto-scroll, so you have to wait longer, so you don't actually save any time. We're going to have Gooey out for a majority of this world. He's not actually going to do that much, but it's usually just not worth the effort of getting rid of him. As long as he's not messing up camera spawns, there's not a big time loss to having him out. The only maybe time loss is a few frames in the goal game if he's slower than Kirby to jump, which he usually is, but if they both land on the exact same spot, which is random, then there will be no time lost. You Kirby or Angry Kirby? Are you referring to like how the North American box art always has an angry version of the Japanese box art. I think both are good. I don't know if one's better than the other. I would have a hard time picking a favorite. Sorry to like not give a real answer, but I'd say I like them both equally. Here's where we really start using Kine. Like I said, there's a lot of water in this world. And I didn't really see that guy get happy, but I did hear the little jingle that plays when you complete a mission. So I should be good unless I got like a frame perfect door entry that doesn't count or something. I've never seen that, but it looks like we're good. Yeah, this level actually has a technique, another one I learned from the TAS, which you're only going to see twice in this level and the next one. Coming up in a little bit, there will be an auto scroll, but one of the key things about this auto scroll is that it doesn't start as soon as you enter the room. You actually have to move over a little bit to trigger the auto scroll. So when you have a room like that, it's actually possible to have GUI go on ahead, go past the screen boundary, and then navigate all the way to the end of the room. And if you do it right, you can stand perfectly in front of the door, and then if you hold up as you stop using your ability, the door takes precedence over GUI warping back, which is usually what happens when he's off screen. And you can just barely move on to the next room. It's pretty tricky, but the one on the next level is much harder. And that's why I grabbed Spark, because that's an ability that I can move with while using when I'm with Kine. Got it. I had a little bit of an uncertain time finding the door. You don't actually know if you're in front of the door until after you commit, so it can be a little scary. If you're just a pixel off, GUI will warp all the way back, and then you have to do it again, or just take the auto scroll normally. And that one's actually important. It saves like 24 seconds or so. This one only saves like 7 seconds, and it's much harder, so I'm going to try it once, and if I fail, I'll just go and take the auto scroll normally. This one also has no audio cues at all. Like, the only thing it tells me is if I've already failed it, that's it. There's nothing to actually help me find my way forward. I just have to use timing. Yes. That's a big run killer right there. I thought for sure I was gonna miss it and just have to take the auto scroll normally. It's so hard to one cycle stitch when he does that. I'm pretty sure it's possible, but I can never seem to do it. So that was a little bit of bad RNG, but I think if you're good enough, you can deal with it. But speaking of RNG, one of the really nice things about running this game is there's almost none. The only significant RNG portion in the entire game is the World 3 boss, Pawn and Con. And usually it's not too bad, but you can lose up to 30 or maybe even more seconds to them if you get really unlucky. Yeah, this is the room I struggle most with in the game. It's really hard to get in between the glunks and the joes without taking damage. If I'm going to take damage, I'd rather take damage from the glunks, which is the sea enemy, because the joes, the sharks, will latch onto you and just hold you there for a second while they damage you. Luckily, Gooey bailed me out there, so I only lost like half a second instead of more. And one of the biggest time saves of using 2P is right here. Normally in this room, you'd have to go into a separate room, grab fire to break some elemental blocks, break the blocks, and then go forward to grab stone, and then go back to use stone on some other elemental blocks, and that's the only way you can get kind through that room. But if you have Gooey, since Gooey can just warp to you, if you have Gooey hold kind, you can warp kind to you as well and save almost 30 seconds, and it makes it a lot easier as well. I find the 2P category a lot more fun, and it is more challenging, but in a lot of places it's actually easier. So I could recommend it even for beginner players, since you don't have to use the hard strats, you can just use the ones that save time and are also easier than the normal strat. And we're coming up on the end of this world, so this is another instance where I'm going to attempt to have Gooey grab clean for me. This is a very new strat that I made up. Usually I'll try to get clean on the next level, but it was really inconsistent and a little bit slow. So I realized there are some free broom hatters in this level if you can just manage to grab them with Gooey while platforming as Kirby. And they all died. That was really unlucky. Usually I can run right under that bouncy that hit me, but for some reason they didn't spawn exactly the same as normal. So I got hit and it totally messed up the camera scroll, which ruined all the enemy spawns. Very unfortunate. So as a backup, I can just attempt to do the old strat, and if I fail that as well, I'll just have to take a 7-ish second time loss and go grab clean in a different level. The worst part about that is that I'm in what I like to call the Gauntlet right now. After you get the tomato in 2.5, you don't get a single healing item unless you go out of your way until the end of 3.3, or actually the beginning of 4.4, the 3.4, sorry. So I have to use this 1 health bar for this level, the boss, and the next 3 levels. And considering I've already lost almost half of it, I'm not very happy about that. I'll try to grab some health at the end of one of these levels. One of the nice things about this game is that even if you lose a lot of health, which is likely, you can still attempt to grab health at the end of the goal games. And as I said, there is a lot of opportunity to lose health in this game. It's very difficult because you have, I think, literally around 10 iframes at 60 FPS. They're basically non-existent, so especially when you're a new runner, if you don't know exactly where all the enemies, you can just take damage over and over and over. You could literally lose like 5+ health in a single room. So this game can be very punishing for mistakes. Here I took that a little safe. If I break a single block that I don't want to, I have to exit the room. Luckily you don't have to reset the whole level, but you have to reset the room and do the entire sculpting process over again, so that's a good 20-ish second time loss. That's one of the few objectives you can fail and not have your run be 100% dead, but it's a large time loss to deal with. It really sucks when that happens. I usually just reset. So I was able to get health there. That 2 health may very well make the difference between living and dying. And here I came up with a strat kind of accidentally, honestly. Acro is probably the worst boss. He really sucks, especially the underwater phase. Normally with Coup and Clean it takes 3 hits for phase 1 and 3 hits for phase 2. But something about GUI is that if you haven't spawned, bosses and mini-bosses take less damage. I guess the developers figured that because you were ganging up on them, they should take less damage or something. Which doesn't really make sense because they're always in iframes anyway, so you can't even do more damage. But the interesting thing there is that if I spawn GUI on purpose, I'll actually take 4 hits to make Acro go into the second phase, which does more damage than 3 hits, even though it's less damage than 4 full hits. And that overkills him by just enough that he only needs 2 hits in the second phase, which is amazing because the first hit's free, so you basically only need to hit him once. And when you needed to hit him twice with normal strats, it was very likely that he could hit you twice, since he moves around quickly and randomly. And if you get hit twice in quick succession in this game, you lose your ability. It's probably my favorite mechanic for losing your ability in Kirby games, because it's not random and it's also not take 1 hit and you lose your ability. But if you lose it underwater, it's over, you cannot get it back. Unless you have Kind, there's no way to inhale underwater in this game. You could technically spawn GUI, and he can actually eat things underwater, but then you're doing less damage, and it's super hard to move with just GUI if you don't have Coup. And you're barely going to even be able to touch Acro, and it's just a mess in any case, any way you look at it. I'm glad we have that strat. It makes Acro much more consistent and usually a little faster. Theoretically, you could go just as fast with the normal strat, but it's much less likely that that's going to happen. These next few levels are pretty tough. They're jam-packed with enemies, and it can be really hard to not take any damage, which is unfortunate since, as I mentioned, I will not be healing until the beginning of 3-4. They're definitely some of the levels I've had to practice the most, and 3-3 specifically is my least favorite level and the hardest one in the game in my opinion. So you really don't have anything even resembling a run until you've gotten past 3-3. Yeah, the objective in this level is a little dark. You actually have to squash the mushrooms so they can decompose and help, or squash the flowers, sorry, so they can decompose and help feed the mushrooms so that the mushrooms can thrive. Seems a little macabre in my opinion. And here we have probably the best song in the game, and one of the best songs in all of video gaming in my opinion. There's a lot of precise coup movement in this levels and a lot of tricks that you need to know to make him move correctly. And I'm going to be attempting to have GUI grab Clean. You need Clean for this level, but I really want to hold on to Fire. Nice. That's a little difficult. As I mentioned a while back, GUI has a second before he can move. So if I had spawned him any lower, I wouldn't have even been able to do anything by the time GUI hit the Buki set, which is what the enemy is called. And he would have knocked it off, possibly killed it, and I would have been in big trouble. I could have at least respawned it, but it would have been a huge time loss. 4 HP for 3-3 isn't great, but it's about average, I would say. It's about what I usually go in with. As long as I don't perform particularly poorly, there shouldn't be much of a worry. Although when I was starting out, I don't think I would be safe with less than 6 or 8 HP, honestly. 3-3 is really cramped and there are a lot of enemies in there. One trick you kind of need to know if you're starting out running this game is that if you're actually low on health, well, let me just explain how Gooey works. For Gooey, you sacrifice 2 health to give him his health bar, and then if you re-inhale him, you get that 2 health back. But if you make him self-destruct, which you can do by mashing A, then you don't get the health back, so that's something to take into consideration. Sometimes the self-destruction is faster, but you often lose HP because of it. And so, if you're already at 1 or 2 HP, the game's not going to kill you just to let you spawn Gooey. So you'll still spawn Gooey, surprisingly, and you'll go down to or stay at 1 HP. So if you are at 1 or 2 HP, you can actually spawn Gooey, then reabsorb him, and you'll still get the 2 HP back even though you didn't sacrifice it, so you'll be at 3 HP. And then if you get hit a couple more times, you can spawn Gooey again and reabsorb him again, and you'll be at 3 HP again. It's actually not foolproof because there are so many enemies and you have so few iframes, it's actually possible for you to take 3 damage before you can even do anything about it. But it's very helpful, especially if you're a new runner. Deaths are extremely punishing in this game. There's only like 3 or so places where you could die and not lose more than a minute. This is the hardest minigame in my opinion. I failed this in a relay race once and had to restart the level. It was very unfortunate. I'm actually going to have Gooey activate here, just for an extra safety guess. If either of you get it right, you're good. So even if I'm pretty sure, I really don't want to fail the objective, so I'll have Gooey guess something, just for that extra chance in case I messed up. This can be especially difficult because of the troll faces. I might see 7 faces, but maybe 2 of them are those smug, angry-looking faces. And if that's the case, I don't want to count them, and if I do, I'm gonna get the wrong answer. So that's the hardest one for me, although World 4 is not free either. One thing I didn't know about these propeller enemies, they're just called propellers for a long time, is that whatever color corresponds to your animal friend, that color propeller will actually chase you much, much faster than the other ones. So for a long time I thought it was just the black ones that were faster, because you basically have Coo all the time. But then I realized that the pink ones were faster when you have Choo Choo, and then I did a little experimenting, and each of them are faster with a different animal friend, except I don't think there's one for Pitch, or maybe Nago. One of those just doesn't have a propeller color to correspond with it for some reason. So here's the big relief, I actually got through 3-3 without taking any damage, is that right? And this first room and a half is not too bad. You basically never take damage here, but you know that if you do, it's going to be when you have 1 HP. But if you can get through there, you get a free tomato right there, and you can finally be back at full health and be a little more confident for the rest of the run. This game very rarely eats your input, but it did there for some reason when I was trying to burn that fish. Shouldn't be a big deal. This isn't a great place to just be throwing away HP, but it's unlikely that I'll actually die. If you can make it about halfway through the first stage in World 4, there are little health drops sprinkled here and there, and you can usually gain more health than you lose. This is the 4th level of the world, another mini boss fight. And then we collect the, I guess, hostage or something. I'm also going to attempt to grab stone here. It's not very easy to do, but if I can get it, I can save a couple seconds. That looked good. Nice. So first off, it's kind of nice. If I would remember, I can just make Gooey go into stone form, which makes him not teleport to me and not mess with the camera. Usually not a problem if he does, but it's nice to just not have that worry. And then why I actually want him to have stone is there's a big vertical room here. So I can send him down to the bottom super quickly and use sort of a small trick like the auto scroll skips. Have him go off screen and then he can go straight into the door. And while he's doing that, I'll grab Parasol for him to hold on to me for all of the next level so I can use it for the boss. Most people use Coup and Clean even for Pawn and Con, but Parasol does the same amount of damage and it's much more versatile. The movement with it is really good, and I find it much better and much faster to take out the boss with. And it's way more fun as well. It feels more like you're playing Smash Bros. As opposed to just an ability where you can only press one button and do one move. Because the Parasol has a constant hitbox, so you can be jumping all over, swinging your Parasol when necessary, and just doing constant damage. It also has a few different moves, unlike most abilities in this game. Like you can shield your face, or you can float down slowly, as well as the normal attack. I'm gonna really try to have Gooey not take 2 damage back to back, because then he'll drop the ability, and that's unfortunate. Nice tomato, I'll take that. Probably isn't necessary, but it's appreciated. Just like in 2.6, it is worth the time to go all the way back to World 1. Waste 30 seconds to grab Coup because he's just so fast. You save so much time overall. The 30 seconds lost is almost nothing in comparison. And you could sure theoretically save time. You can always technically be faster with a second player controlling the second person. But there's basically only one strat that I can't really do by myself, and that would be creating the sculpture in 2.6 and also in 4.6 from both sides at the same time. So I've been thinking about that. I don't think it's worth the effort. There's actually not much you can do with 2 different people that you can't do with one person and a bit of practice. So far, I don't think there have been any speedruns submitted for this game with 2 different players. Although if someone did a run, it would probably get its own category. And just as a reminder, I'm trying to have the person without the animal friend go through the door whenever possible because of that longer animation if you do have a friend. And this is a really tough room for new players. You're supposed to grab Kine and you can easily go through this water current, but if you mash fast enough with Coup for long enough, you can actually just kind of brute force your way through the current, and that allows you to keep Coup for this entire level, which is a big time save, because you don't have to go to the extra room, grab a different animal friend. Here, take that. Thank you, Gooey. Since they already have Parasol, I'll just have them break that for me. And then I'll go through and grab the appropriate abilities, break all the blocks, and collect the rob piece. Might as well have Gooey go through the door since he's right there. This is a really annoying room to do in 1P, because all these, you can only go downwards through the blue parts, and for all of the 2 tile wide blue gaps, Ku is exactly 2 tiles wide. So I don't think I mentioned this, but if there's a 1 tile gap in this game, it's actually pixel perfect to go through it, so it can be really difficult to squeeze your way down in there. You see it only a couple times in like 1.6 and 3.1, but the same thing applies if you have Ku and there's a 2 tile gap. I believe it's also pixel perfect, so it can be hard to work your way down through the gaps faster than the auto scroll comes down, and it will kill you even on the way down. The intended solution for that room is to go and get Kine and Light Bulb, and that will show you the correct way to go, but it's always the same luckily, which is really nice. We don't have to worry about trying to guess to get a good time, so you can just memorize the path and it'll work. So we're coming up on, as I mentioned, the only significant RNG in the run, Pawn and Con. There's 2 of them, and they go on a cycle. Each cycle is about 7 seconds. However, neither of them have to appear on any cycle. You could literally go 5 or maybe more cycles without either of them appearing. And if that happens, it's just time loss. There's nothing you can do about it. The fastest possible kill is a 2 cycle. The fastest reasonable one that you can actually get in a run is a 3 cycle. So we'll see what I get. I got a 2 cycle once in 1 run that was already dead, but the RNG you need for it is incredible, as well as the execution. So only having 1 appear is not great, but it's better than having none appear on any given cycle. So if we can get a quick 4 cycle, yes. Con was not forced to appear on that last cycle, so I'm glad that they did. A quick 4 cycle is pretty good. Now we're moving on to Cloudy Park, which I would honestly say is a step down in difficulty from World 3. Not by much, but the biggest difference is that you have health scattered throughout this world, where there's almost none in World 3. There's literally 1 tomato in World 3 that's free, and anything else you have to waste time to go get. It's a well-placed tomato at least, but it's still the only one. Just go ahead and damage boost here. Unfortunately, you can't inhale Scarfies, so unless you take the time to like pick up a projectile or keep an ability, the fastest thing is just to damage boost through them. As long as you've got more than 1 HP, you're probably fine, because you get an orange juice later in the level, high C as I like to call it, right here. And even if you're at 1 HP, a trick you can do is to spawn Gooey, which won't take any health because you're at 1 HP, and then grab the orange juice, and then re-inhale Gooey, and you'll go from 1 HP to 5 HP just like that. This is actually one of the scarier levels in the run, you don't get to the objective of the level until the very last room. It's another flower one, because we're on the first level of the world. You have to dust off each flower with some sort of feather duster, like Coo and Clean or Rick and Clean. So you have to touch them to dust them off, but if you touch them again, they instantly die and you have to reset the entire level. And this is not a short level. So if that happens, your run is just dead. It's probably even worse than dying in most cases. I know this is a marathon, but I'm feeling a little risky, so I'm going to take this pretty fast. I've been practicing it a lot, so hopefully I don't touch any of the flowers for too long. And there we go. Not a big deal until it is. As long as you don't touch any of the flowers, you're good. One complaint I hear about this game, mostly from a casual perspective, is that with Coo, you can just fly over every level. But I would say anyone who says that has not actually really played the game, because I think they probably had that in mind, because this game is designed in a way where there's a lot of caves, a lot of ceilings, a lot of aerial enemies, stuff that completely prevents you from just flying over the level and not interacting with anything at all. That being said, this is one of the levels that you can just fly over. There are just a couple in the entire run, and here is one where you have to do almost nothing. You can just stay at the top of the screen and not worry about much of anything. So this is one of the more boring levels in the run, I would say. It also can be taxing. You're just mashing the whole way along, not doing anything else, not taking any breaks. But it doesn't take very long. You get through about 7 rooms, I think. And you move on to the next level, which is one of the harder mini-games. Unfortunately, Needle does not have a very large hitbox, but you need it for the objective in this level. You have to pop a balloon, and actually, Cutter does not work for some reason. They give you Cutter right there, but if you try to use Cutter, it'll just do literally nothing. It has to be specifically Needle for some reason. Despite you using, like, basically a saw blade on the balloon, it doesn't pop. Here we got another minigame, another dangerous one. I actually failed this minigame in a more recent relay and had to restart the level. So World 3 and 4 minigames have not treated me well recently. I tried to do a trick there where you can keep your horizontal momentum in water. I sort of did it. I was going a little faster than usual, but if you do it just right, you can keep all of your momentum, so you can be at normal flying speed even when in the water, which, as you can see, is normally very slow. That's another thing I learned from the task, and I know the concept of it. You just have to hold only down and not left to right, but in practice I have trouble doing it consistently. I'm not sure exactly what you need to do it well. Once again, I'll have Gooey just do a safety guess, even if I'm pretty sure I'm right. Good thing I did there, because I was not able to count all of them in time. That was close. Another benefit from 2P. I believe I already mentioned that having GUI out just allows you to be closer to the door. But if you're uncertain about any minigame, you can also have GUI do a second guess. So that's another way which 2P can actually make the run easier. And I mentioned the tasks a few times, so WaddleDX made a task for this game for this category, Best Ending, also 2-player, and I would definitely recommend checking that out if you want to see your mind blown. It's really crazy some of the movement that the task can do. There are even a few glitches. This game is pretty solid, relatively glitch-free, but there are quite a few clips and some smaller glitches in the task that I'm not sure if they're human viable or not. Unfortunately, the commentary for the task is in Japanese, so I can't really understand most of it, but just watching the task is incredibly impressive, and it does a lot of things that I had no idea were possible before watching it. Another Gourmet Race level. You only get to listen to Gourmet Race twice in this game, so you gotta cherish it while you can. Yugi's theme is also pretty good, but you barely hear that. That's only playing for like 30 seconds. Something I've actually not been having much trouble with this run is doors. Doors are unironically the hardest enemy in this game. That's true for a lot of Kirby games, but this one especially. Since you've got Q, if you press up with Q, you go up. So if you're not already in front of the door, when you press up, you go up, and then you're not even at the right height for the door. So you gotta fly around a bunch, try to get right in front of the door. It's often not a big deal if you can just go right in it first try, but if you miss it, you can flap around looking like an idiot for like 5 seconds before you finally get into it. It's a really unfortunate way to lose time. Besides 1-1, this is the only other level that you could get the objective for accidentally. If you forget that room right there exists, and your mind goes ahead to this one, you'll just hold left. And that's actually a bad thing in any percent. If you complete the objective, even if you don't want to, then the heart star at the end of the level will spawn and lose you time. On the other hand, if you forget that room exists in Best Ending, you might forget to grab the tangerine, and then you have to restart the whole level, so that's much worse. The lesson there is just don't forget that room exists. Even though it's literally less than a screen wide. This level is what I like to call the Mario Maker level, and it's also the level where you're most likely to choke. If you've run this game, I can almost guarantee you choked on this level and probably died. On GUI a little bit early, he's actually going to mess with the spawning there. I don't want him to mess with the camera, so I'll take a second to get rid of him. I just accidentally hit the A button. Start with Rick. It's just basic platforming. It's basically like Mario. That's why I call it the Mario Maker level. You just run and jump. You jump off the enemies, and you continue on your way. But for some reason, in this last room, even though it's just straightforward running and jumping, it is so easy to make a mistake and fall down and die. There are even platforms below where you can catch yourself if you do fall down, but usually your brain just locks up. You can't commit to continuing to go forward, you can't commit to trying to go to the safe platform. You just fall straight down and die. And I've seen that happen to so many runners, myself included. There's also a neat little trick where you can actually dismount some animal friends, not Ku, right in front of a door, and then if you press up within the 2 frames after dismounting them, you can instantly go in the door. I did not get it there, but it's a cool little time save if you can get it. More swag than a really important trick to learn though. And this is one of the few times I'm not going to get out of my way to go and get Ku before this level, and the only reason for that is that you can get Ku in the level instead. And for some reason, if you slide over gaps from certain distances, you can just stand up immediately, which cancels the long end lag from the slide. Slides are fast, but the long end lag where you can't do anything are the reason they're not actually viable as a speed tech. But if you can cancel that end lag, they can be a little bit faster. Another way you can cancel it is by grabbing an animal friend. So occasionally I'll slide into an animal friend and then press X in order to grab them immediately. Okay, I'm trying to get a double star. For some reason, sometimes the game just doesn't give it to you. As you can see, I clearly inhaled both the propeller and the star block, but the propeller just kind of survived, didn't go in my mouth for some reason. That's a pretty new strat as well. It's like the only place you can even use a double star effectively in the entire game, so it's kind of cool. I like to get it first try, but unfortunately sometimes stuff like that happens and I don't really know why, to be honest. The alternate strat is just to burn your way through the whole room, which is not terrible, but it's a little slow. And if Gooey won't mind, I'll just have him pick up a broom at the store while I go on by. I don't really want to take the time to stop and pick it up myself, so I'll just have him grab it and bring it home with him. And then I'll use it when he gets home. It is possible to have clean for every single boss without ever re-entering a level to get it, which is obviously faster if you can just grab it on the way instead of going backwards and re-entering a level you've already played. This is Otto. She's going to attack us with a lot of bosses from Dreamland 2. You can actually recognize most of the bosses. You've got Rough, which was a boss in Dreamland 2, but for some reason it's just a regular enemy here. And then in this fight, you've got Ice Dragon, Sweet Stuff right here, Shine and Bright, and also Kracko. Obligatory Kracko cameo. However, none of them are too tough. Kracko can be a little tricky, but he's the only one that takes more than 4 hits to take out. As long as I don't get hit twice quickly and lose my power, I'm pretty much good. We've beaten the first 4 worlds in under an hour. Not exactly world record pace, but pretty good, especially for a marathon run. And now I got the last level, which, as you might expect, is the hardest, I would say. The biggest thing is just to have enough HP for the first couple levels, which I believe I do. but it's not difficult to be down at like 3-ish HP from the auto fight alone, just from the previous levels plus the fight. 5 is not great, honestly. If I don't take any damage here, I'm pretty good. But I'm going to want to have Gooey spawn for the next level, so that's going... Ooh, that's bad RNG. That's going to take a couple HP away from me right there. So now I'm basically at 1 HP, so I'm going to grab this orange juice. Unfortunately, only saved 1 HP because the Rocky hit me. I couldn't get off the ground. One of the annoying things about Coup, the few things I don't like, is that for some reason you stick to floors and ceilings, and it takes a second to get off of them. So like, if you're on a floor and you press up, you will just stay on the floor for like half a second before you start going up, and if it's sloped you might not even go off at all until the slope ends. So that can be a big problem. You might have to literally go backwards if there's an enemy in your path. I might have to grab health at the end of this level if I can. Fortunately, the jumping minigame is not that easy. I'm pretty consistent at it with Kirby because I have to be for running 100%. But with Coup, I am not as consistent. Luckily, both the health are next to each other, so I'm almost guaranteed to get at least one. And if you're curious why this is 97% as opposed to 100%, the only difference between best ending and 100% is that the extra 3% are 3 minigames unlocked after you beat the game. So 100% is just best ending plus those extra minigames. It's good that they're different categories though, because a lot of people don't want to play those extra minigames and have trouble beating them, especially on the first try. But if you're doing a best ending run and you get a good time, you can at least attempt the minigames and try to get a good 100% time as well, which is kind of nice. You can get 2 PBs in one if you do well on the extra 3%. As long as I can get through this level, I'll get a heal near the end. But the hard part is actually getting through, especially since I need to have Gooey spawn during the entire time. So that takes an extra 2 HP away from me, as I mentioned. Now for some reason in this level, we just have to freeze a bunch of Metroids. Literally just Metroids. We even see Samus at the end. And the reason I'm switching to just Kirby is that for some reason, if you use Coup and Ice, even though he shoots out 3 shards of ice, you can only freeze 1 or maybe 2 Metroids at a time. So if I use Kirby, I can just use the constant ice breath and freeze all 3 of them. That's the reason I want Gooey spawned, so he can hold Coup for me. Technically I could just drop Coup and re-grab him, but if you do that, you get the animation that plays whenever you grab a new animal friend every single time. So if I just swap between the 2 players, you don't get that animation and you save time. And there's Samus. If you don't complete the objective, she has her helmet on. But if you do, she has it off, kind of like the ending of, I think, the first Metroid game, or maybe Super Metroid. And now everyone's favorite level, favorite minigame, and favorite NPC, Chef Kawasaki. Luckily, I personally don't find this minigame very threatening. My issues are with World 3 and 4, but I know a lot of people really hate this minigame, and starting out they might have to play this level 3 or 4 times to be able to clear it. Imagine trying to do a blindfolded run of this game, though. This would be the only minigame you could actually clear without complete guessing. That would be kind of funny. Then it would go from the hardest minigame to literally the only possible one, besides just blind guessing. There's another case where I can have Gooey just hold Coup for me, so I don't have to drop him and get that extra friend animation. In 2-player, that tomato is literally free, although it is possible to accidentally lose your ability or like have Gooey die or something. And then in 1-player, it's pretty much free, just the animation is just like half a second, so it's not a big deal. Better than not getting the tomato and dying, that's for sure. So I'm gonna crank up the volume on my TV a little bit. I shouldn't have a problem with the minigame unless I can't actually hear the sounds, so hopefully there are no like random loud thumps or anyone revving their car engine or something stupid like that. Dang it. You can press down or A to swallow. And I was pressing A there, but I pressed it twice. So when I swallowed my ability, I also spawned Gooey, since that's the spawn Gooey button. So then I had to re-inhale him. And my trick for that minigame is I just give all the sounds names. Actually, I give 4 of them names. And the last one is just unnamed. And so I just say their names in my head in order as they play, and that helps me keep track of which is which. I don't know how helpful that tip is, because I've told multiple other people it, and it doesn't sound like it helped them much, but that's how I do it, and it works pretty consistently for me. I'm gonna grab Parasol here. This is another optional ability that I don't really need, but it'll make the mini-boss a little easier. If you keep fire, then you can really get some bad RNG with the mini-boss coming up. It's probably the second largest RNG point in the game. That being said, it's only like a few seconds either way. But if you have Parasol, they only take 3 hits instead of 4 with fire, and it's not as bad if they go into a corner. If the mini-boss charges into a corner and you have Coup and Burning, you can't really hit them without going into the corner yourself, and then you take damage, and they try to hit them again. You're gonna get hurt twice and lose your ability, and it's just a mess. The order for the sounds on the Gordos and the Chef Kawasaki minigame does change every time. That's the hard part of it. You gotta keep track of the changing sounds in each round. If it was just the same sounds every time, no one would have trouble with it. So cool strat I learned from watching other people is that if you leave Coup outside this door, he'll actually respawn in this room since he would be here normally. And then he's sitting right here, which is much closer to where I need him than if he was sitting at the beginning of the room, where I would need to drop him in order to pick up Choo Choo. Dang it. Missed 1 row of blocks. Barely jumped the gun there. The mini-boss I was talking about should only be 3 hits. It's easier not to lose my ability with Parasol, although not free. And then I can dispatch with him pretty easily. Yuki there, the mini-boss, has 3 different attacks. If it jumps, then you can just take it out easily no matter what ability you have, but the other 2 give him a significant amount of iframes, and you can't actually hurt the boss until you've taken out all its heads. So it can be really annoying to deal with. Now I've got one of the hardest levels in the whole game, possibly harder than 3-3. Also a bit of a troll level. It's the 5th level of the world, so you know that I'm going to need to take a specific animal friend to the end. But unlike literally every other similar level in the game, you don't get Nago anywhere in that level, and the game knows it. Usually it just gives you what you need in the level. But not only does it not give you Nago in this level, it gives you every other animal friend multiple times. So if you don't have Nago, or if you die or something, the game just keeps rubbing it in your face that you don't have Nago, and you still don't have Nago, and your only option is to reset the entire level. Honestly, I think it's kind of funny, but it's also pretty mean. Here's probably the biggest instance of, because GUI can hold my animal friend, I save a ton of time from going through doors, because there's literally more than 30 doors just in this level alone. If you include the memorization factor, this is definitely the hardest level in the game for new players, because you have over 30 rooms in a row. You have to memorize at least most of them, if not all of them. As you can see, I sort of forgot one room myself. The room with the stone enemies, where you have to go straight up, because it is hard to keep track of all of these rooms right in a row, especially when all of them only take like 3 seconds to go through. So you have to mentally be zipping through the catalog of rooms, constantly switching to the next one and figuring out which one comes after that, and being prepared for it too. And this is the only room I couldn't figure out a good method to get through with just Kirby, so I'll switch to Nago quickly and then just switch right back to GUI taking them. Fortunately, if you do get low, your only option is really to absorb GUI to get that extra health, because if you die, you lose your animal friend, so you have to restart the whole level over. So if you're low pretty early on in the level, you have to take Nago yourself, and then go through the whole level with Nago, which is both a little more difficult, and you lose time on every single door, so it really sucks. Sometimes you might die anyway, because you have a bigger hitbox, so you might take damage multiple times really quickly, and end up dying before you can even spawn and reabsorb GUI. I'll be honest, I still don't have this room order 100% memorized. I remember pretty much all the important ones, but not every single one every single time. Just have Nago be a pal and knock that Mumby out of my way so I can go straight up. And now we're at the final level in the game, the mini boss rush. Another scary one for sure. We'll just leave Nago here with his pal, Shiro. Shiro's the name of the other cat. I think it's canonically Nago's girlfriend, or maybe sister. So here I'm going to be using a whole bunch of 2P strats. So I'm going to have my controllers back to back so I can try to control both people effectively at the same time. Choo Choo plus Clean is one of the 3 highest damage dealing combos in the entire game. So we definitely want that. You use Choo Choo even in 1P, as you're constantly having to switch between abilities. Choo Choo has the best damage overall with all of the abilities. at least on average. So the gimmick of this level, you have to fight all the bosses, but then you also have to use their abilities to grab the angel feather in the next room. So if I were doing this normally, I would constantly be using really weak abilities that I don't particularly want. But on the other hand, if I have Gooey grab the abilities, I can keep clean throughout the whole level. And this isn't necessary, but you can also save time by having Gooey grab the feather in. You go through the door. The problem with doing it this way is that unless you take time to reabsorb Gooey after every single boss, which would lose a lot of time, then you're just having him self-destruct, and you never gain any HP back. So you can be down to 1 HP for the majority of an entire boss rush level, which can be really scary. I'll often have Gooey absorb that boss as well and take clean, but obviously you don't need to do that since you have clean yourself. But I'll usually get into autopilot and not really think about it. Luckily I remembered this time. This level's really scary because if you accidentally touch the boss's body before you absorb them, and after they're defeated, they'll just instantly disappear and you have to reset the level. Or if you accidentally go through the door before Gooey fully absorbs the power, that's also a reset, because you don't have the ability you need. That went pretty well, however. And luckily, because I don't need or even want Gooey for DDD, I can reabsorb him and get 2 HP back, which apparently I won't need because I got a random tomato. And another plus from doing 5-6 this way is you don't have to go back into 5-1 to get clean, you just already have it for DDD. So overall, this strat saves like 30 seconds total. It's a pretty big time save, but I've yet to PB with the strat. I've been attempting to do that recently. I want to get a new world record with some updated strats. I'm actually going to put the second controller on the floor here. This would be the end of an any % run. However, if you collect all the heart stars, you unlock the secret final boss, which is a pretty normal thing in Kirby games. So we have not yet finished. We have one more long battle to deal with. And I'm going to actually want Gooey for part of the fight. I'll explain why later. But I want him to constantly be attacking, and the AI Gooey is really bad. It just kind of wanders around randomly and doesn't attack very fast. So I'm actually going to use my feet to try to attack in a much better rhythm than the AI would. And another helpful trick from the task is you can once again reset after the cutscene fully opens, which not only allows you to skip it, but it gives you full health, which can be really good since you're usually at like 3 after DDD, as I would have been if I hadn't gotten the random tomato at the end of 5-6. And that's really important because this boss is super random, and it's basically impossible to do it damageless on purpose. If you get lucky you can, but if you get unlucky you'll just take damage, even if you're playing well. And honestly, Zero, the next phase, isn't even the hardest part. It's hardest not to take damage on dark matter, at least for me. Most of Zero's attacks are reasonably predictable, not all of them. But dark matter can just shoot lightning randomly in any direction at basically any time, with only a tiny bit of warning. So I've mentioned before that bosses take less damage if you have Gooey spawn, and that's still true. However, this is the only boss in the game without any iframes, so even though the boss is taking less damage, it's not 50% damage. It's more like 80% or so. So if I'm attacking them with twice as much attacks, I still do more than I would do just as normal Kirby with 100% damage by myself. And Gooey will probably die in this fight. That's pretty normal. You just hope he dies later rather than sooner. Like, I would have liked to not take that last attack and he could get a few more off before he expires. And the run will end on the last hit of this boss. And for some reason, despite Kirby games being cute, the final boss is always extremely horrifying and honestly scarring. Time. And I forgot a split, but that's time. And that's Kirby's Dream Land 3 best ending. Pretty good run. I'd like to give a shout out to WaddleDX for making the tasks for this game. I've mentioned it a few times, definitely check that out if you want your mind to be blown. And also shout out to Pro_Hybrid. He was supposed to be running this game in the marathon, but he had a lot of stuff come up and became really busy, so I needed to fill in as a backup. I wasn't actually the intended runner for this marathon. Thank you for all the GGs. That's gonna be it for me. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the run. Have a good night, have a good rest of the marathon, and goodbye.